power isn't always seized on the battlefield. Sometimes, history changes forever inside a locked room, where no one can leave, no messages can escape, and the future is decided through whispered arguments and secret votes. Right now, behind the sealed doors of the Sistine Chapel, the world watches and waits as the 2025 Papal Conclave unfolds, an ancient ritual still capable of shaping global events today. But conclaves like this aren't just religious ceremonies. They are the living descendants of a brutal political tactic as old as civilization itself. Trap the decision-makers, isolate them from outside influence, and force history to bend to their will. Across empires, kingdoms, and republics, conclaves have crowned rulers, ended wars, sparked revolutions, and even rewritten borders, all without a single public witness. The locked doors we associate with solemnity today were once battlegrounds for survival, ambition, and desperate negotiation. Today, on Armchair Archaeology, we're opening those locked rooms of the past to uncover the extraordinary story of conclaves throughout history and how their legacy still echoes in the power structures of our own world. And before we're done, we'll reveal the brutal tale of the longest conclave ever held, a gathering so deadlocked that starvation, exposure, and raw desperation finally broke the impasse in a way no one could have foreseen. Behind every great shift in history, somewhere, there was always a locked door and a choice made in the shadows. Before we dive into our first story, make sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology and turn on the notification bell. We're just getting started uncovering the secrets of the past, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. When we hear the word conclave, it immediately conjures images of solemn rituals, cloaked figures, and secret votes. But the true origin of the word reveals a harsher, more urgent reality. It comes from the Latin conclave, meaning with a key, describing a physical act. A room locked from the outside, trapping those within until a decision was made. This was no symbolic gesture. It was a blunt tactic for forcing agreement when the stakes were too high for indecision. By the medieval period, locking participants inside became an accepted and often brutal method for solving deadlocks. When powerful factions refused to yield, rulers and religious authorities turned to confinement as the only remaining weapon. The idea was simple. If persuasion failed, exhaustion and desperation would eventually succeed. Cut off from allies and outside pressures, leaders had no choice but to hammer out compromises or suffer the consequences of delay. Europe formalized this practice in law and custom. By the 12th century, rules governing conclaves grew severe. Participants who tried to leave early risked political disgrace, the loss of lands and titles, and even excommunication, the ultimate spiritual punishment of the age. Within these locked chambers, power dynamics shifted by the hour. Old loyalties broke under the weight of hunger and isolation. Fragile alliances hardened or collapsed in whispers. Even in today's world, the logic of the conclave endures. When CEOs retreat to corporate summits or world leaders meet behind closed doors, they are following a pattern born centuries ago, isolating decision-makers to strip away distractions, escalate pressure, and force the future into being. The locked door remains a timeless tool, not only for keeping secrets, but for forging history itself. If you're fascinated by how ancient practices shaped the modern world, check out our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. The link's in the pinned comment. It's packed with mysteries, technologies, and civilizations that continue to inspire even today. Let's start our journey with the first secretive conclaves, deep inside the Roman Senate. In ancient Rome, politics thrived in public view, or so it seemed. Beneath the grandeur of open debates and Senate speeches, Rome also relied on secret conclaves when crises demanded swift, decisive action away from the crowds. When fear gripped the city or loyalty faltered, the Senate could call emergency sessions known as Senatus Consulta, closing the doors of the Curia and debating in strict secrecy. One of the most chilling examples unfolded during the Catiline conspiracy of 63 BCE. Lucius Sergius Catilina, an ambitious senator, plotted to overthrow the Republic. Panic swept through the Senate and the streets. In response, the Senate invoked the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, an extraordinary decree granting consuls near absolute power to defend the state. Behind closed doors, senators argued whether to execute Catiline's supporters without trial, a decision that flew in the face of Rome's cherished ideals of due process. Inside the chamber, tension boiled over. Not everyone agreed on how far to go, and divisions ran deep. To push a verdict through, the consul Cicero began leaking selective details from the secret debates to his allies outside, stirring public outrage and putting immense pressure on hesitant senators. Even locked away from the public, the conclave could not escape the shifting currents of fear and ambition outside its walls. Rome's secret Senate sessions reveal an essential truth about conclaves. Isolation was meant to create clarity, but more often it intensified paranoia. When the stakes were highest, secrecy didn't guarantee reason. It magnified desperation. The republic that prided itself on openness often made its most fateful decisions in shadows, setting a pattern that political bodies have followed ever since. Behind Rome's marble facades, history's hidden doors were already swinging shut. When a medieval king died without a clear heir, his kingdom didn't simply pause and wait for a rightful successor. It often collapsed into dangerous uncertainty. To prevent chaos, nobles and high-ranking clergy would seal themselves away in private gatherings, early royal conclaves, where power struggles unfolded behind barred doors and thick stone walls. In Poland, during the 14th century, the Wielka Rada, or Great Council of Nobles, played a critical role in choosing new kings. Delegates would gather in fortified castles or guarded monasteries, locking themselves inside until consensus was forced. These weren't orderly elections, they were survival games. Alliances shifted by the hour, promises were whispered in secret corners, and bribes changed hands beneath heavy cloaks. The stakes were never abstract. Foreign monarchs often tried to interfere, sending envoys or agents to pressure the conclaves from a distance. Inside, the nobles knew that a wrong choice, or no choice at all, could invite invasion or civil war. Time wasn't just a factor, it was a weapon. As negotiations dragged on, food supplies were sometimes deliberately cut to pressure factions into agreement. In Hungary, during succession crises like the one after King Louis I's death in 1382, nobles facing days or weeks of locked deliberations resorted to intimidation and even outright threats against rivals to break stalemates. In these brutal conclaves, royal power wasn't granted by divine will alone. It was bargained for, battered into shape by hunger, fear, ambition, and desperation. Behind the grand coronations recorded in chronicles, the real struggle for kingship often took place in silence and shadows, where only the most enduring and ruthless could survive long enough to see a crown placed upon their chosen candidate's head. In the heart of medieval Venice, a republic ruled by merchants rather than monarchs. The election of the Doge, the city's highest leader, was an event shrouded in layers of secrecy and control. Unlike other cities where bloodlines determined power, Venice built an electoral machine designed to resist corruption and factional domination, and they achieved it by embracing complexity as a weapon. The Great Council, composed of Venice's most powerful noble families, assembled behind tightly closed doors. From there, a labyrinthine system of draws, votes, and redraws began. Electors were chosen randomly, only to then choose another group, who selected another, until finally a small circle cast votes for the next doge. The process was so elaborate that even seasoned political families could not predict how influence would shift from one round to the next. Inside those locked chambers, the pressure was immense. No communication with the outside world was permitted. Guards patrolled constantly, ensuring that no secret messages or outside bribes could penetrate the conclave's defenses. Deliberations stretched for days, sometimes longer, as alliances crumbled and reformed under the suffocating weight of uncertainty. The genius and the cruelty of Venice's system was that it weaponized randomness itself. Nobles who had spent lifetimes building influence could find themselves powerless by the drawing of a single lot. Carefully laid schemes dissolved into chaos, forcing true compromise where ambition alone might have ruled. Venice's Great Council elections reveal a timeless truth. Power does not survive by trusting individuals. It survives by trapping them inside systems they cannot easily control. In a city built on trade and cunning, the true masterpiece wasn't a building or a ship. It was the invisible machinery of secrecy that allowed a fragile republic to endure for centuries. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What ancient secrets or hidden councils do you think deserve a deep dive next? Drop your ideas in the comments below. While Venice's Great Council elected its leaders through careful manipulation of chance, true control of the Republic rested with a much smaller, far more secretive body, the Council of Ten. Created in 1310 to handle internal conspiracies, the Council quickly evolved into a permanent institution, one that governed Venice's security and political stability from the shadows. The Ten operated beyond the reach of the Doge, beyond the scrutiny of the Great Council itself. Meeting in private, they decided matters of espionage, treason, and counterintelligence without public trials or appeal. Their judgments were swift and, more often than not, final. They recruited informants from every level of society: merchants, servants, even members of noble families. In a city that thrived on information and intrigue, the Council of Ten became the invisible force, ensuring that power remained carefully contained. Within this web of surveillance, fear became the most reliable tool. Citizens were encouraged to report suspicions anonymously through carved stone, mouths of truth, small openings in public walls where accusations could be slipped in secret. A few whispered words, dropped into the darkness, could destroy a rival's fortunes or end a life without warning. Even inside Venice's most powerful families, trust frayed under the constant pressure of invisible scrutiny. The Council of Ten didn't just govern the Republic, it reshaped its very soul. Ambition became cautious, loyalty became calculated, and survival demanded constant vigilance. In creating an official apparatus of secrecy and fear, Venice pioneered an early version of the intelligence state, one where the real battles for power were not fought openly, but in silence, suspicion, and carefully crafted shadows. The marble streets of Venice sparkled in the sunlight, but true power moved in darkness, where few dared to look. Now, let's travel east, to the imperial courts of China, where the shadows of power moved just as silently. In Imperial China, power rarely announced itself openly. Beneath the grand ceremonies of the Forbidden City, behind layers of courtiers and rituals, true decisions were often forged in private conclaves, sealed meetings where politics and survival intertwined in deadly ways. Palace councils were not formal government sessions. They were hidden gatherings of trusted officials, generals, scholars, and royal family members, summoned to advise or manipulate the emperor behind closed doors. Within these secret rooms, alliances shifted quickly. A single misstep could mean exile or death. During the Tang dynasty, when imperial succession crises rocked the empire, such conclaves became critical. Empress Wu Zetian, the only woman to rule China in her own name, rose to power not through public declarations, but through these silent meetings. She forged alliances with generals, eliminated rivals quietly, and gradually moved from regent to emperor, all while maintaining the illusion of dynastic stability outside the palace walls. But secrecy also bred counter-conspiracies. After Emperor Zhongzong's death, his widow, Empress Wei, gathered her supporters in clandestine councils to plot her rise to supreme power. Yet even as she schemed, rival factions within the palace held their own secret gatherings. In a single decisive move, they struck first, overthrowing and executing Empress Wei before her ambitions could fully unfold. The very tools of secrecy she relied on became the weapons that destroyed her. In the imperial court, conclaves were not exceptions. They were the bloodstream of governance. Decisions that shaped dynasties were made in whispered conversations, where survival depended not on strength alone, but on silence, timing, and ruthless alliances. Beneath the shimmering roofs of the Forbidden City, the most powerful battles were fought in shadows, and history often turned on a secret whispered behind a closed door. If you're enjoying these hidden stories of power and intrigue, you'll love Secrets of the Ancient World. It's your portable guide to the lost cities, ancient tech, and mysteries that shaped civilization. Grab it from the pinned comment. The Islamic Golden Age, stretching from the 8th to the 13th centuries, is remembered as a time when science, philosophy, and culture flourished across the Abbasid Caliphate. Cities like Baghdad became hubs of innovation, where scholars from across the world gathered to unlock the mysteries of nature and the mind. Yet behind the shining surface of public knowledge, a quieter, more strategic world thrived. Private councils where rulers and thinkers shaped not only ideas, but power itself. In palaces like the Beit al-Hikmah, the legendary House of Wisdom, caliphs convened secret gatherings of their most trusted scholars and advisors. While public discussions celebrated knowledge, these private meetings handled matters too sensitive for open debate. Religious doctrine, political alliances, military campaigns. Ideas debated in these rooms could strengthen an empire or tear it apart if handled poorly. As rulers sought ways to guide and control their diverse populations, they increasingly turned to philosophy for answers. It was within these secret gatherings that the works of Al-Farabi found powerful application. His theories about the ideal city, where philosopher kings shaped education, belief, and law to build harmonious societies, became more than intellectual exercises. Rulers absorbed these ideas as practical blueprints, crafting policies that molded loyalty and obedience without open coercion. In the hands of caliphs, philosophy became a tool for engineering the empire's very soul. In these conclaves, knowledge was wielded like a weapon. Scientific discoveries, political theory, and theological interpretations were carefully curated and deployed to secure the caliph's hold over a vast and diverse empire. The Islamic Golden Age was not just an era of enlightenment. It was an age where ideas were guarded as closely as borders, and where whispered debates in private chambers often decided the future more powerfully than any battle fought in the open. Fast forward to the founding of a new nation, where secrecy helped shape the birth of the United States. In 1787, the United States was a fragile experiment standing on a knife's edge. The loose alliance of states, tied by the Articles of Confederation, struggled with rebellion, economic collapse, and bitter political rivalries. The dream of independence risked fragmenting into a continent of warring regions. To save the Republic, 55 delegates gathered in Philadelphia, locking themselves inside Independence Hall for what would become one of the most consequential conclaves in modern history. For 4 intense months, the windows of the building were nailed shut. Guards were posted at every entrance, and the delegates swore an oath of secrecy. No reporters recorded the arguments. No citizens knew how fierce the divisions had become. Inside, the delegates wrestled with explosive issues, balancing state and federal power, confronting the moral and political chaos surrounding slavery, and preserving unity without sacrificing liberty. The myth of serene consensus, later told in textbooks, masks a much harsher reality. James Madison's private notes, kept secret until after his death, reveal just how perilously close the convention came to collapsing. Delegates from smaller states, furious at the prospect of losing influence to larger states, threatened to walk out altogether. Tempers boiled, alliances cracked, and for days, the dream of a united country nearly dissolved. Only through desperate compromises, like the creation of a bicameral legislature with equal state representation in the Senate, was disaster narrowly avoided. The Constitution that emerged was not a product of perfect vision. It was carved from fear, division, and raw political survival. Without the protection of secrecy, the fragile American experiment might have shattered before it ever began. Like the conclaves of ancient times, America's founding charter was born not in the open sunlight, but in the pressured silence behind locked doors. If you're into these hidden stories of power and intrigue, you'll love Secrets of the Ancient World. It's your portable guide to the lost cities, ancient tech, and mysteries that shaped civilization. Grab it from the pinned comment. In the modern world, conclaves haven't disappeared. They've simply evolved into quieter, more polished forms. While political leaders hold official summits and public forums, some of the most powerful decisions still happen far from cameras and headlines in secretive gatherings like the Bilderberg meetings and Bohemian Grove. First held in 1954, the Bilderberg meetings bring together political leaders, CEOs, royalty, academics, and media moguls from Europe and North America. The meetings are strictly off-limits to the public. No official minutes are recorded. Participants operate under the Chatham House rule. They can use the information they gain, but cannot reveal who said what. For decades, conspiracy theories have swirled around Bilderberg, fueled by its intense secrecy and the extraordinary influence of its guest list. Bohemian Grove, hidden deep in the redwood forests of California, offers a different kind of conclave. Every July, some of the world's wealthiest businessmen, artists, and political figures gather for 2 weeks of informal talks, ceremonies, and performances. Behind the playful ceremonies, decisions made here would someday unleash world-altering forces, like the secret planning of the atomic bomb itself. In 1942, it was inside Bohemian Grove that a small group of officials, including future Secretary of State Henry Stimson, met quietly to plan what would become the Manhattan Project, the secret wartime initiative that developed the atomic bomb. A casual retreat turned into a starting point for one of the most devastating technological leaps in human history. Modern conclaves show that secrecy remains a vital tool of influence. Whether cloaked in luxury or hidden in the forest, behind every major shift in world affairs, the same old pattern endures: isolation, negotiation, and decisions made beyond the reach of the public eye. When most people hear the word conclave, they think first of the Catholic Church's most secretive ceremony, the election of a new pope. The elaborate rituals, the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel, the rising smoke, the solemn oaths are the public face of a process born from centuries of political chaos and reform. In the early Middle Ages, papal elections were often chaotic, slow, and dangerously vulnerable to outside interference. Without formal rules, rival factions of cardinals battled for control, while kings and emperors tried to pressure outcomes. At times, the Church went leaderless for months or even years, crippling its authority and fueling instability across Europe. The need for a stricter, faster system grew urgent. By the late 13th century, Church officials recognized that papal elections could no longer be left to endless negotiation. Under the leadership of Pope Gregory X, new conclave procedures were established. Cardinals would be locked inside a secure space, forbidden from communicating with the outside world, and pressured to reach a decision quickly. These rules were designed to isolate ambition, contain factionalism, and force consensus under grueling conditions. Even today, inside the Sistine Chapel, cardinal electors surrender their phones, letters, and all contact with the world beyond. They remain locked within sacred walls, under immense psychological pressure, until they choose a new leader for the Catholic Church. The white smoke that signals a new pope's election is a symbol of unity, but it emerges only after a long, grueling struggle behind closed doors. Behind the pageantry, the spirit of those desperate medieval reforms still defines the conclave, a silent battle of faith, politics, and endurance, where the fate of millions hinges on secret votes cast in whispers. Throughout history, conclaves have been the hidden engines of power, silent rooms where futures were decided, far from the noise of public life. From the secret councils of ancient Rome to the locked palaces of medieval kings, from revolutionary halls to modern political retreats, conclaves have shaped laws, crowned rulers, and even unleashed forces that changed the world forever. Across centuries, one thing remained constant. When the stakes were highest, leaders turned to isolation. They locked doors, sealed windows, and swore oaths of silence, knowing that only under unbearable pressure could true decisions be forced into existence. The shadows behind those locked rooms weren't accidents of history, they were deliberate, ruthless tools of survival. And now, as promised, here's the extraordinary fun fact we saved for the end. The longest conclave in history took place in the city of Viterbo after the death of Pope Clement IV. For nearly 3 years, cardinals bickered without reaching a decision. Desperation didn't just seep into the conclave, it exploded into chaos, forcing the unimaginable. Desperate to break the deadlock, the citizens of Viterbo took extreme action. They locked the cardinals inside tighter, rationed their food, and eventually tore the roof off the building to expose them to the sun, rain, and cold. Only under these brutal conditions did the cardinals finally choose a new pope, Gregory X, who immediately established the strict conclave rules that still govern papal elections today. Secrecy, endurance, and struggle have always defined the true nature of conclaves. Behind every ritual, every locked door, and every whispered vote, there lies the same battle. A battle where history bends, not in the open, but in silence. Thank you for joining us on Armchair Archaeology. If you enjoyed this journey into history's hidden decisions, please like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. We can't wait to hear your thoughts. What secret meetings would you like us to explore next? And don't forget, if you're hungry for even more ancient mysteries, secrets, and mind-blowing discoveries, our ebook Secrets of the Ancient World is waiting for you in the pinned comment. Dive even deeper into the lost knowledge of the past. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.